Hello and welcome everyone. In this video I want to talk about how I made this snare sound like this snare. Part of the trick is to get an NFT license for the Grater, the full version, which is what I got for sending in my bug report and also being very helpful about it. Yeah, the developer just wanted to know what I have to say about the full version, and that's why I have the full version now. But I gotta say, it is a really unique plugin, and if I had known what it gives me, I would have considered buying it as well. So first of all, let's go back to the dry sound. It sounds like this. And then I made an FX layer where I have one layer that is called punch and it just has Presswerk on it. Because Presswerk is a very fast compressor. No matter what kind of tag you dial in, it will always sound very clicky. When you just turn up the release a lot, then you get this typical parallel compression punch sound. Cool thing is you can also add some distortion to it very subtly, to make the transient that you get a little bit more unique. And now the second layer is the grater. As you can hear, that is basically the thing that makes this so great. That was a wordplay because this plugin is called the Grater. Hahaha. I will just make a new instance of the Grater now. I gotta say one thing though. I think the name Grater Light is more catchy than the Grater. Because Grater Light sounds like the plugin shows you the way to a greater light, while the Grater is just some name with the in the beginning. Anyway, let's mute the other instance of the Grater so that you can hear how I tweak the sound. So the first thing that you notice is that it's just way too loud, so you can turn down the volume. Now you get a sound that is pretty much similar to the dry sound actually, not quite the same. And the first thing that I want to do is make myself sort of a default preset where pre-tonality is always turned on and slice up also, because I just know that I keep on using these every time. Also the grater should always be 100% by default, so that you get these very intense sounds from it. And that's my default preset now. Now let's play around with the settings. Now when you turn down the sharpness a lot, you get a sound that is pretty similar to the dry sound, and also like it's somewhere in between the dry sound and the punch sound. So you can use this compressor for punchy sounds as well. However, I think it shines more when you are turning up the sharpness. Because then it really brings up the body of the snare, the metallic sound that you just couldn't hear at all without the Grater or a similar plugin. Now pre-tonality is a pre-EQ where you can dial in some different character on the whole sound. It reminds me a bit of the EQ section of each band in FabFilter Saturn, but this thing also has a presence band, which is sort of a second treble band, but a bit more specific about the part of the range that is for presence, which is pretty cool. I really love this distinction because sometimes the treble band is just not boosting on the right frequency, and then the presence band can be used to compensate for that by going like this. Because all of these seem very wide, but that makes at least the high end a bit more narrow and controllable. Now let's go on with this plugin. There is also an interesting filter called Reso Burst, which sounds very drastic when you turn up the resonance. The Reso Burst is a nice tool when you have a sound like a snare, like in this case, where the fundamental frequency just doesn't move. So you can just figure out a frequency that works well with the sample for some reason. And it doesn't have to be the fundamental frequency. I just mean that the harmonic series of the sample doesn't move. So you can dial in the frequency. I'm being so specific about that because I have also tried using this on bass lines, and then I found it to be not very useful because then it will just boost some of the notes more than others, and then it just creates sort of a chaos that is not very nice in most cases. But you know, easy samples like this, then a feature like this is actually great. Feature request though, if this could be set up in pitch instead of hertz, that would be pretty cool, because you might be tuning your drum sounds to a certain pitch and then you know this pitch, and then you can just type it in here or drag it on the exact value instead of having to guess. That would be nice. This little window, you could just be a little bit bigger and show both values maybe, and then a little snap button or whatever. Okay, so dynamic reinject is a very interesting concept. It kind of tries to bring back the dynamics of the dry signal even though it's still distorted as hell. 100% of both values, it just sounds like the dry signal to me. I must admit I have a hard time figuring out what the difference is between reinject and tightness. I just feel like turning up any of them will make this dynamic reinject thing more prominent, and turning down any of them will just put it more into the background. And there is also a little low pass filter on the output. This value sounds pretty good. And a mix controller. Like in most plugins that I'm testing, unfortunately, this mix control is not mixing between the dry input and the wet output, but between the dry output and wet output, so to say, because the gain is applied to both sides. It's an output gain. In cases like that, I just don't use the mix parameter of the plugin itself and just do that with the chain module in Bitwig. For now, I don't need it because it's in an FX layer anyway. One other thing though, there is also sort of a gate here. I was told by the developer that it's not a gate, but something that is kind of working from inside of the compressor, but I think it sounds a bit like a gate. I mean, check this out. Usually it doesn't sound very desirable on most sounds, because it always has these little hiccups where it doesn't do just what you want it to do, but something similar, which is just not exactly what you want it to do. That's why it reminded me of gates and of envelope shapers and stuff like that. But in this case it actually works, which is pretty cool. So now we found another setting with Grater that we can mix into the whole sound. In a case like this, I also noticed before that it can make sense to just pan the output hard. Now that's obviously too hard. Now we have a width control. To add a bit of this gate thing and on this side as well. Sweet. Okay, now, of course, you don't have to take my word because I got an NFR code for this plugin. When I say that this plugin is great and everything, but I think you have just seen that I pretty much enjoy this thing. So I think I can recommend it anyway.